Maya pa Gatpanapon po. I am Makapampangan from Tarlac Province, and I'm privileged to be introduced by a townmate. So my topic is post-Nobila Pebos, the other side of the British occupation of the Philippines and the recollection Cavite, 1762 to 1766.
Sorry.
Okay, and so what we have is actually not a British officer, no? It was actually the Castellan of Cavite, as drawn in some paintings, some uniforms, as an aftermath of, I think, of the British occupation. And the one in the picture underneath is an English Castellan of Cavite, Richard Kempenfeld. No? So this essay deals with the British occupation of the Philippines with focus on its effects and repercussions in the province of Cavite, which aside from the capital city of Manila, the English invading force partially occupied from 1762 to 1764. As an aftermath of the occupation, there is a focus on the development of Imus in the upper portion of Cavite province, both eventually as a pueblo and the Casa Hacienda, which gained a priority status from the priors of the Order of Agustinian Recollects, whom we call the Recoletos, due to the conditions of Manila and the Cavite Puerto, or the present-day Cavite City. This motion, as the paper would argue, greatly contributed to the advance of Cavite outside of its coastal and port city, with the institutionalization of the Hacienda system for almost 2 centuries of Spanish presence, and the conversion of its sprawling settlements as the eventual economic hubs of the province and the region. So this is where I got the title, Gracias a Dios, Padre Nuestro, que post-Nobila Pebos. No? I will just share the English translation. Thanks be to God, our Father, that post-Nobila Pebos, after such turbulence and the afflictions of an impassioned war, we are now traveling towards the port of clarity and respite. No? This was the salutary of the letter of Father Miguel de la Consolacion, OAR, to his Recollect Vicar General Pedro de San Jose, dated July 16, 1764. It was about what transpired almost 2 years earlier in the Philippines. So it was a Latin expression, after the clouds, pibus, or after the rain, the sun. So this was a description of the Plano de la Bahía de Manila con la Plaza de Manila, la Plaza de Cavite. So we have to take note that the site of the galleon trade was not actually Manila Bay by itself, but the Bacoor Bay in the Cavite area. So this was a sketch of the Manila Bay with the Plaza de Manila, the Plaza de Cavite, and the environs, and the situation of the English enemy by sea and land. So the promontory. So on 1714, I will not be explaining more on the background since it has been shared so many times this morning. So I will just cite some insights from the recollects themselves. So there appeared in Manila Bay an English steamer, un paquebo Ingles, as a cronista and a confrère of Fray Miguel wrote about la invasión Ingles, the English invasion, refused admission into the Philippine colony, as the paquebo itself refused inspection. It tarried in the area, retiring of the coast of Maribeles, Bataan for some time. Of course, this paquebo was actually the frigate Seahorse, no, which was part of the British fleet on lookout in the area from the Moluccas. So according to Percy Hill, it even sent a boat to reconnoiter Corregidor Island, the crew landing and making inquiries as to whether the galleon had arrived yet from Acapulco and then left without saluting. So this is the profile of the Seahorse in 1770. It sailed for India on February 4, 1761 to observe the transit of Venus and then moved to Manila until October of 1762 in support of the Battle of Manila. So as part of the quiz later, this is a review of some 3 personalities, no? So first we have Sir Samuel Cornish, the first baronet, was a British naval officer, etc. So he was the head of the British army, no, that took over the Philippines. No, then we have Lieutenant General Sir William Draper, another baron. Later was a British military officer who conquered Manila in 1762. And then of course the infamous Dawson Drake was the first British governor of Manila from 1762 to 1764. And then during his term as Manila administrator, he was the governor of White Town from 1742 to 1762. He was said to be a direct descendant of Sir Francis Drake. So the actual possession of Cavite, according to Rear Admiral Cornish, with the connivance of Archbishop Rojo and his consejo, the taking of Cavite was simplistic and mere formality. On the 10th of October, I sent Captain Kempenfeld, but in Draper's account, it was Captain Champion, no, in the Norfolk, with the seaport and the Seahorse to take possession of Cavite, agreeable to the capitulation. The Rear Admiral wrote, no. Draper mentioned that the captain brought with him 100 Marines and an undetermined number of sepoys or Indian soldiers in the service of the English in taking Cavite. And there was so much in the taking of the port for the Englishmen. By this acquisition, according to Cornish, we are in possession of every large quantity of naval stores. And beside the advantage of almost every convenience for repeating a squadron, the people are supplied with fresh meat and vegetables in a great plenty. But for Cornish, of course, there were still difficulties, no, with the weather at most not cooperating. The rains fell very heavy and our little army were surrounded and harassed by numerous bodies of Indians who, though undisciplined and armed only with lances, bows, and arrows, yet by a daring resolution and contempt for death, they became not only troublesome, but formidable. So it was from Cornish. No? Now for Simon de Anda, the young oidor, who assumed control of the Spanish colonial government in opposition and in confrontation with Archbishop Governor Rojo, believed though that the fort of Cavite could have been defended, for it was in good condition, but it was handed over without any attempt at defense. So for him, this would have saved great trouble. And he was saying that Manila was lost because it was poorly defended, the citadel because it was basely surrendered, as was also the port of Cavite, and not because there was a lack of brave Spaniards, but because they had the misfortune not to have a leader to manage them with less ignominy, disorder, and confused foresight than those displayed by the Archbishop. Emphasis mine. No? For Percy Hill, there was something in the taking of Cavite by the Englishmen. This was perhaps the only case in the annals of invasions of the Philippines in which the capture of the Cavite forts was neglected as a side issue. According to Percy Hill, when Cavite is surrendered, 300 Spanish troops actually mutinied and deserted with their arms. No, this disappearing in the countryside of the province by way of the Lahican. Draper mentioned in support of this account, no, from Percy Hill, that the Spanish garrison of 300 men on the approach of our people, mutinied against their officers, plundered some houses, and went up into the country with their arms. It is interesting to note that more than 100 years later, in 1872, soldiers assigned at the same fort also mutinied, providing a dent and a noble course for Philippine history. So this was to sustain this, of course, Captain Champion, according to Draper, took charge of the Fort San Felipe with a garrison of 200 Marines and sepoys. No? So according to Sinibaldo de Mas, the Castellan, or the governor of Cavite, at first refused to surrender the fort and prepared to defend it. But the soldiers deserted and the natives began to loot the arsenal, whereupon the Castellan also fled. So, but it should be mentioned no, that in the defense of Manila on October 2, those 3 columns were to be supported by 2 pickets of musketeers commanded by the Sargento Mayor of Cavite, 2 captains, and 4 subalterns. And in the list of the Spanish prisoners of war of note, so it was Don Jose de Riarte, the Lieutenant Colonel and the Governor of Cavite, Don Francisco Rodriguez, the Sargento Mayor, and the 2 adjutants. They were the one who surrendered to General Draper. So the military facilities that were confiscated by the English at the Cavite Port and Arsenal include the following. These were what were taken over by the English when they took over the fort of Cavite. So this is the port, which is fortunately existing up to now. It is now under the Philippine Navy. It is Port San Felipe. I pictured it in an earlier book. So siguro you are wondering why Atarlaqueño is writing about Cavite. As just to earn my living also, I of my output photographing revolutionary Cavite. So this was the fort, which was taken by the English in 1862, which is existing up to now. But it's not for public. You need permission from the Philippine Navy to be able to enter it. And then I will be saying something about the English Castellanos de Cavite. I was telling the people of Cavite that they should write the history of their province based on the Castellanes, because it's very important. I will just share some insights about it. Of course, may utang pa ako sa Lasal. This is supposed to be the one, Castellanos de Cavite, Proto-Provincial Administrative History, 1609 to 1898. But I found out that the term Castellan de Cavite existed only with regards to the galleon trade. So with the collapse of the galleon trade, there was no more the Castellan as called, but already as the governor of Cavite. So I will just permit me to give some historical heuristics on the term Castellanes de Cavite. Of course, he was the actual head of the Castillo or Puersa or the castle or port of San Felipe. So for some time, I was telling the Caviteños, you should take importance on this, because the first administrative head was known as the Castellan de Cavite. In the case of Philippine colonial history, the role of the Castellan, or its Spanish form of Castellano, was downplayed, in fact, not given importance, or words not at all mentioned. Usually, the term corregidor or corregimientos is popular. Castellan, and undeniably of European provenance, stems from the Latin Castellanus, or the castle. As the political position in most European countries, he was known as the constable, the governor of the castle district, or the captain. And then, of course, Castellana, it means actually the extent of the territory. So it is not only the fort, but the district, no, where the port is situated. So Castellanos appeared during the medieval period, and as political subdivisions persisted for some time in most countries, especially in Europe, no. So according to recent work, I think among the recent scholars who took more than a casual glance about the Castellan de Cavite was Shirley Fish, no? In her monumental The Manila Acapulco Galleons, the treasures of the Pacific. In discussing about Cavite Puerto, she says, the port was operated by a manager and superintendent known as the Castellan. But he was not selected for his familiarity with naval matters, but for his connections to officials. Actually, it was the term has been synonymous with corruption, no? With the galleon trade, and of course with the customs now, no? But it will be, I suggested, but it will be fruitful for the purposes of the present study, no, on my forthcoming book on the Castellanos of Cavite, to examine intently the role of the Castellanes in the provincial history of Cavite. A very good example is, of course, the Castellano Antonio Fernandez de Rojas, and the excellent article of Maria Lourdes Diaz Trechuelo. So, very important, the service records, or the hojas de servicios, no? Though archived mostly for purposes of increasing emoluments, they speak of the various achievements of the appointed Castellanos de Cavite. So worthy of in-depth biographical studies in colonial history. Of course, you know Antonio Fernandez de Rojas? Anybody? Okay. And so, he is actually part of the what's the term, ma'am? The cabinet there, the one prepared for the conference. Something is missing in that cabinet, no? And so this should be placed as among the So this was the Topografía de la Ciudad de Manila. So Antonio Fernandez de Rojas was a former Castellan of Cavite. So I think I saw it there. So this map, according to the collector, has additional resonance because Manila was besieged and looted by the British in 1762, and annotations in the maps bottom right refers to the aspects of the battle. So there was this question, could it be George himself? According to the collector, I placed the blog. This was the best in the George the third collection of maps. No, it was drawn by a former Castellan de Cavite. So this is an example of the hojas de servicios, no, of Castellan, no. So I tried to underline just to have an idea what was actually the power, no, of a Castellan at that time. So he was Titulo de Alcaide y Castellano de la Fuerza San Felipe del Puerto y Rivera de Cavite, etc. No? That was how long was the title. No? Yeah. Of course, you can find this in the petition, nombramientos, pleitos, especially when they were asking for salary increase. No? So Alcaide. So accordingly, there is a Portuguese expert here, no? Si Ma'am Cristina is a Portuguese expert, and I cannot really question, no? But accordingly, the term alcaide was a Portuguese provenance, which evolved into us now as the alcalde. So I was pointing out that in preparing against the Dutch, no, Governor General Juan de Silva started the structure of the Puerto de San Felipe in 1609. No? So that's the alcaide. The Castellanes, the Castellan as the alcaide. No? He was also the Justicia Mayor. He was the main administrator of justice in his locality thus the Cavite territory. No, I will not elaborate on this, but just to see how important the term Cavite or Castilian in our presentation. No, and of course he was also the head of the army. No, he was the head of the Spanish force in the locality, as mentioned in the Fernandez document. No. Okay, I will rush. My kababayan is not giving me extra no. So we have of course the first English Castellan de Cavite, Richard Kempenfeld. So the captain of the Norfolk ordered to take over Cavite on October 10. So according to Draper, Mr. Kempenfeld, the admiral's captain, I beg his acceptance of the government of the citadel and port of Cavite till it was given up to the company. No? So this is Kempenfeld. Do you know him? Of course, Kempenfeld, that was his background, which you will just read in the full paper. And then he was saying, in presenting him to John Cleveland, no? I will present to you for the lordships a plan of the town of Manila and the port of Cavite. No? And then Kempenfeld was also used by Cornish in the delivery of the copper plates involving the precious and important Philippine map of Pedro Murillo Velarde. So Kempenfeld was holding these copper plates, no, forming part of the British loot, no, which we are trying to resolve now. No, given as prize item to Lord Anson, Cornish also had this salutation cum recommendation in favor of the captain, saying that he was bringing some copper plates of the Philippine Islands that were found in Manila. And then later he would be having many campaigns, but there is a bay now in Canada by the city of Barrie in Lake Simcoe. This is the Kempenfeld Bay. No? It was named in honor of Richard Kempenfeld, the first English Castellan of Cavite. So the other Castellan is Captain William B. Brereton. No? So he's very important since he's part of the Silang Revolt, which was presented earlier. No? So I will not give the details. Not perhaps as noteworthy and accomplished as his predecessor, is very important in Philippine history, notwithstanding, as he was the signatory of a letter to Diego Silang of May 6, 1763, regarding the attempts of the British to win the provinces aside from Manila and Cavite, and was among the intriguing figure during the duration of the short-lived occupation. So I was able to identify that his name was actually William Brereton. No? Accordingly, according to Thornton, among the classic write-ups, wrote some interesting information of Brereton. One was the fate of the galleon Filipina, no, which was said to be carrying bullions and other treasures in time with the British invasion. I think when it was captured, the galleon was already empty. In exasperation, Brereton set the Filipina ablaze and returned to Cavite. So Thornton also analyzed some steamy details of the short-lived British stay in Manila, a sojourn not without its fissures. This include the relationship of Dawson Drake, no, the controversial British governor of Manila, and his installers, Draper and Cornish, both superiors of Brereton. No? So he was saying it was not a good relationship, no, between British East India Company and the British Army. So when Cornish abandoned, his command in the Philippines, the one left behind was Captain Brereton. No? So Brereton and Drake were at each other's throat. They were all living on their nerves, and July's news of the end of hostilities came as a profound relief. Of course, what happened on March 8, 1764, there was an instruction from the King of England to return Manila to the Spaniards. No, so Brereton, together with General Thomas Backhouse, the commander of the British ground troop, formally demanded Drake to deliver Manila to them, so that they might deliver it up to the Spaniards. So they were the captors-in-law, and accordingly, the Spaniards want only to deal with the army, not with Drake. No, so the new Spanish Governor General Francisco Javier de la Torre was already appointed starting March 17, vice the belligerent Anda and the late Archbishop Governor Rojo. No? So, and so the British occupation of Manila ended more than a month earlier with the Castilian of Cavite surrendering or giving it up, no, and was accepted by the Spaniards. Now, what happened with the three? No, this is part of the quiz now. What happened with the three? Draper, Cornish, and Drake. Of course, you can see this also in the cabinet. So Draper built, I think this is in Bristol, an estate in the north called the Manila Hall. So Rear Admiral Cornish brought his own large estate in England and retired a rich man. And Governor Drake was born and raised in India, returned to India wealthy with new possessions, including paintings from the Governor General's palace. No? Of course, it was a different story for the second and last Castellan of Cavite. So actually, Brereton was still fighting for his reputation, even in the afterlife. No? In 1782, 2 decades after this occupation, there was this petition of Captain William Brereton, late governor of the city and district of Cavite, and the commander of His Majesty's ship is stationed in the Philippine Islands among the journals of the House of Commons. No? So accordingly, Brereton was not paid. No? You can see it here. No? So, but what I find important is the actual date when he assumed, no, being the Castellan of Cavite, dated 14th of November, 1762. So, wherein he was appointed the Lieutenant Governor of the Castle, Town, and District of Cavite. Kanya very important, no? Very important yung term na Castellan. And also an order dated 1st of March, 1763, no? Etc. So, okay, ma'am, I'm trying. Okay. Accordingly, Brereton was writing to the Admiralty in 1766 to complain that he had not been paid for 6.5 years. No, I think this was the retort of Drake, no, against Brereton. No, okay. So this was the letter. No, this was the letter of Monsieur Brereton to the Castellan of Cavite, Monsieur Brereton to the Sergeant of Ilocos, Diego Silang. No? So this letter will show you that at some time they were expecting through Brereton that it will be a very lengthy invasion. Okay. So last, because this order was responsible for my trip, no? So I will just mention some as a conclusion. So Akchine es Isla Jerusalem, Cavite during the British occupation. Again, this was from a Latin. We religious said to ask each other, is this the Jerusalem? In such manner that we could not look at it without being in tears, no? I think this was from Lamentation to Das 15. So this was from the letter, no? Thus mimicking a prophet from the Old Testament, lamented Father Fray Miguel de la Consolacion in the said letter, no? It is already something for the news, most reverend Father, how the English enemies took by assault our Manila capital, executing us conquerors. Their dictates upon us, either with the wrath of their nation or with the despotism of being such. No? So they looted the city without the least respect for the sacred, and the convent of your most reverend suffered for 8 days. So this was from the painting, no, which I showed earlier, that the church of the Recollects was actually bombed, not by the British, no, but by the Spanish themselves, under the order of Archbishop Rojo, as a safety measure on Intramuros, no. So in the details, okay, the convent of San Juan was burned and ruined. Okay. Again, not by the British, but by the Spaniards. So these Recollects were actually very mad, no? Not against the British themselves, but against their fellow Spaniards, no? So they were also disappointed with the report of one of their superior, the historian Juan de la Concepcion, no? Who, not knowing the actual extent of circumstances in Cavite, casually mentioned of the English invasion without underscoring or fully representing the plight of poor souls like him, who had to take care of their disabled confreres. No? No pudimos coger el hato y correr. We cannot take the herd and run. No? So this was some from the Recollects. Of course, it was in Cavite convent that Fray Juan de la Concepcion, the one mentioned, no, by our keynote speaker, had prepared the manuscripts of the Porton volume, Historia de Filipinas, a landmark in Philippine historiography. But for his confrere, he was actually very soft on the British invasion. No? So I will not tell the details of this. Archbishop Governor did in Cavite, no? According to I will shortcut. According to Simon de Anda, Your Excellency made the round of the village amid the fine music and ladies, inciting the latter to sing the Chairo, the Porito, and other profane songs, interpolating them with the Most Holy Rosary, which was recited in the church. And after the round, the above dances were held at Your Excellency's lodging. This was the retort, no, of Anda on the actuations of Archbishop Governor when he was visiting Cavite under the British, no. So what happened to the British occupation of Cavite and its aftermath? Of course, we have those who left, no, when most of the British left. The one left behind were, of course, as already discussed, the Sepoys and the Chinese, no. So I think Dean Santa Rita dealt only on the Sepoys, and then there was of course the Chinese who were left over. I pointed here the importance of the Chinese because in Cavite now we have the Sangli Point, no? Okay, and then that was the Sangli Point. But of course, which is my topic, no? What happened was that the Colegio de San Juan de Bagumbayan, as a payment, what the Recollects did was to transfer it to Imus, no? And from there, Imus became a very important, a very important mission of the Recollects. So this was the Recollect Towns of Missions of Cavite from 1616 to 1898. So this was what happened, no? With the evolution of the estancia y Hacienda de Imus into a premier parish and township, no? So thanks to the English occupation, the Recoletos were able to develop Imus, no? So these are just some photos, especially, of course, among the famous administrator there was, of course, San Ezequiel Moreno, no, who was the prior of the Hacienda de Imus from 1882 to 1887. No? So that's it. Okay.